So our region again is the 5 counties in the northwest corner, and this is regional data here just to give you a little bit of insight on the demographics of our area. So our total population is just under 165,000 people. That's for all 5 counties, and we have a poverty level of just under 10%. We also have just under 72,000 total housing units, again, for all 5 of our counties. And our largest city is the city of Defiance with roughly 17,000 people. So we're very small, very rural, not a lot of resources here, and there's a lot of blight and vacant structures. So common challenges that rural small land banks face that we face here in Northwest Ohio, and I'm sure others face throughout the state. Most of our land bank board members, it's just volunteers that have limited experiences. They're, the government officials on loan. We don't have full-time staff for our land banks. Our DTAC funding is pretty minimal. So it's natural for land bank things to go low on the priority list for these individuals because they have full-time jobs on top of their volunteering for their land bank board. Minimal budgets, which is an issue for everyone everywhere all the time, but especially for our small rural land banks, we're not getting millions in DTAC funding and things like that. So we definitely struggle with budgets and the ability to complete projects because of that. We have a general lack of resources too. We have a lot of houses and structures that have been abandoned or vacant or blighted for years and years and years, and there hasn't been a whole lot of resource dedication to those in the past until our land banks have stepped in with the help of the ODOD funding. And then we also have a common hardship with property acquisition and code enforcement. It's not common that we're acquiring properties strategically. Not a lot of our counties do foreclosure processes and things like that. So there's not just properties that are commonly available for us to grab. And then again, we don't have code enforcement typically. There's not a lot of zoning out here. There's not a lot of nuisance abatement going on. So just overall lack of resources, and generally these kind of issues are low on the priority list. So pre-ODOD funding, our land banks weren't doing a ton of active work because there wasn't resources. MVPO, we still provided them some assistance. So we still did grant writing and administration as it became available. We essentially function off of what funding is available and don't really have a strategic direction or project pipeline because we're just kind of following the funding. Our land banks didn't really coordinate with each other pre-ODOD funding because, again, it was just kind of low priority. We were doing projects as they were becoming available and not really strategically thinking about how to acquire and take care of these problem properties. We had 1 to 2 staff members dedicated from Maumee Valley Planning. Each staff member probably spent like 20% of their hours on land banks pre-ODOD funding. We offered website maintenance and record keeping. We attend all their meetings, and then we did provide resources and other technical assistance, but we were definitely more hands-off prior to receiving the ODOD funding. So to put that into context a little bit, all 5 of our land banks were created between 2016 and 2021, and we kind of led those creation efforts here at MVPO in coordination with the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. And pre-ODOD funding, we were completing about 12 projects per year regionally. So very slow. Again, as the funding was available, that's what we were going after. So then put in ODOD funding, and we wanted to take advantage of that, but because our land banks were kind of low on the priority list previously, we didn't have the processes in place, so we had to do a lot to bring our land banks to scale. So currently, we went from doing 12 per year regionally, and in the last year with ODOD funding, we've completed 95. And today, as of this morning, we have 184 projects in our pipeline. So we've doubled in the last year of how many projects the land bank is getting involved with. So this is kind of how we did it. And by we, I mean MVPO in collaboration with our land banks. So MVPO kind of had to change our staffing structure to be able to manage all of this. We upgraded some technology. We really encouraged our land banks to make joint decisions and communicate across county lines. We implemented access agreements and contractor pre-qualification. We changed how we did procurement, and we added a couple other logistical things to help manage the complexity and the major amount of increase in projects than what we had done previously. In terms of structure, we immediately hired a part-time person to help us just manage the site visits and progress and photos, because I have a site that's an hour drive from my office and it's all out there by. We realized that we were going to be spending way too much time in our vehicles, so we hired a part-time person to kind of manage all of the site visits and making sure that progress is being made on the sites. And she just comes in like 1 to 2 days a week, and as we need her. We got our fiscal officer on board with helping us with the fiscal side of the grants. Previously, it would have been me doing that, but now we have her that is managing that process. We have 2 administrators basically doing all 5 counties. Land bank isn't my only job, but I spend probably about 80% of my time, and another person spends about 20% of their time. And then we also have support from our executive director. In terms of technology, previously we didn't have anything for e-signature, and we realized we were going to be dealing with a lot of contracts, a lot of notices to proceed, and just a lot of things that needed signature. So we had all of our land banks approved to do business via e-signature, and purchase the software to manage that, and it has saved a lot of time and has helped with the tracking of documents as well. We also created a shared demolition email. So that is where all of our property owners contact us, our contractors contact us. It's where they turn in their quotes and their contracts and photos. So it kind of helps, since so many people at MVPO are working on it, just to keep all the emails and communication in one place. And then across county lines too, it makes it easy. So it's very communicated who they need to contact. We also got a cell phone, which is really nice. So all of our site photos were no longer going on my personal cell phone. I think I cleared out like 1,200 site photos on my cell phone the other day. So now we have a cell phone for all of our site photos. And then our contractors love it too, because now they can text me instead of calling our office phone. And then same with property owners, we're able to text them. So that definitely has helped too. Decision making. So previously, our land banks all kind of operated on their own, and we didn't do a lot of cross communication with them. And now we encourage our land banks to make joint decisions together. And it helps me as an administrator, and then it also just helps us regionally, which I'll dive into a little bit later. But we make joint decisions on things like letters that we're sending out, and contracts. All of our contracts are standard for all 5 of our counties. Our contractor pre-qualification process is standard for all 5 of our counties. So we consistently update them when we're making changes to things, or if one county proposes a change, and we try to keep all 5 counties kind of on the same page, but we do recognize that each county has their own individually unique needs too. So we adapt as needed. But certainly with timelines, it makes it a lot easier too, because everybody and all of our contractors know that if they're working in any of our 5 counties, their deadlines for the most part are going to be the same. So access agreements were another thing that we implemented. Previous to ODOD funding, we did not have a lot of projects in the pipeline, like I mentioned. So when ODOD funding came about, it was kind of a scramble to find properties to use the funding for. So we took the route of using the funds to help private property owners demolish structures. Because we didn't have a lot of nuisance abatements going on, the land bank didn't own a lot of properties, and we wanted to make sure that we were taking advantage of the funds. So 98% of our projects in the ODOD site revitalization program are privately owned. So we did access agreements in order to access their property and complete the demolition. Other changes, we changed how we did procurement. So previously we just were procuring things as they came about. But with the 95 projects that I had, we definitely had to be strategic about it. So we had our land banks kind of prioritize which properties they definitely wanted to see come down. And we grouped them by priority, and we grouped them by geographic location. And then we had contractors quote each property individually, but we had multiple properties on one contract, and that was communicated with the contractors up front of which ones would be on which contracts. We released about 20 properties per week, 20 properties per round, and rounds ran about for a 2-week period. So we had, I think, 7 or so rounds that we did where we would release all the properties and give all the contractors all the information, and they would have 2 weeks to get their quotes into us, and then we would do the bid tab and then turn around and release another round. And the contractors liked this because it wasn't overwhelming and they didn't have to do 90 projects all at once. And we liked it too because it allowed us the time to establish our contracts with them, and we weren't super overwhelmed and bogged down with paperwork up front. So we did all the counties on the same schedule for this, and so the contractors were quoting any county that they wanted to. Some contractors would do all 5 of our counties. Some would only stick to one county, but all the counties were in the same demolition or the same procurement round. We also did contractor pre-qualification. So in order for a contractor to submit a quote or a bid on one of our projects, we made them become pre-qualified with us, with MVPO. So when they filled out all of their paperwork, they were automatically pre-qualified for all 5 of our counties. And they didn't have to do a pre-qualification process for each county. And this allowed them to have access to all of our projects all at once. And they enjoy it because they didn't have to submit all their paperwork 5 different times. We also implemented site visits, which were not common before. Since we were managing so many properties that each had unique needs and different amounts of structures on them and things like that, we wanted to make sure that nothing had changed from the time a property owner told us what they wanted demolished to the time that demolition was actually going to happen, because there was about a year in between the application time and the time that we started seeing demolition activities. So we created a carbon copy form for our site visits that walked property owners and contractors and us through everything about the property. So we went through what structures needed to be demolished, what structures needed to remain, where wells and septics and cisterns and things like that were, went over utilities to make sure everything was cut, ensured that property owners had everything removed that they wanted to keep. So it was just a really good time. We required it for all of our properties for the contractors to be there on site too. And then it gave the contractors and the property owners a time to talk as well and talk about deadlines and dates and things like that. So property owners could have their direct contact. With the site visit, we did that before we issued a notice to proceed, and then we also continued site visits throughout the time of the demolition process. So we would go try to visit every site while the contractor was on site doing the demolition. And then of course we've done multiple site visits after the demolition to ensure that grass was growing and everything was completed on site as it should have been. And then we started a property demolition queue. It's really just a Google form. It's very simple. We don't have any software that we use. It's Excel sheets and Google Forms, whatever's free. That's what we use. And this property demolition queue has over 80 responses in it, and anybody from any county can fill it out, and it automatically populates all the information that we need. They just fill it out, and then that from that list, we then send out the letters and the intake form that we've created to gather more information on the property to then be able to submit it for future funding. Some other tips that we've learned along the way too, for brownfield management, we do an RFQ process for an environmental agency who manages all of our brownfields for our region, and we provide support to them as needed. So that's been very helpful, and I serve in some capacity there, but our environmental consultant really takes charge there. Partnerships are very important. That's something that I think everybody is aware of, but the only way that we develop our project pipeline is by reaching out to townships and municipalities and villages and elected officials and other organizations in the land use space. Most of our projects are identified from those people, and it's really important to invite them to come to your land bank meetings, or to go to them and help you do all of the groundwork for identifying the projects, because we have a few counties that haven't used their first $500,000, and we have another $500,000, and we're kind of struggling to come up for projects right now. And those people are the ones that are helping us identify future projects. And personal connections are also huge. There have been several properties that we wanted to pursue, and we would call them or send them a letter and wouldn't ever get much response. But we have found that finding somebody that knows that person and having, that connection reach out is really helpful to convincing them to be added to the demolition program or some other land bank project. So any personal connection that you can make with a potential property owner has gotten us a lot farther. And don't be afraid to negotiate either. We have done some negotiating with some property owners of trying to get them in the project pipeline. They might want to acquire some other parcels that we own, so sometimes we work out deals like that too. So why should a land bank consider collaborating across county lines or working with a regional planning organization? There are several benefits to this. Our land banks benefit clearly, our contractors benefit, but Maumee Valley Planning Organization benefits as well. So for land banks, our land banks are able to have a higher impact. Our land banks are doing more. They have me supporting them, doing all of the legwork for all of the applications, and they otherwise wouldn't be able to do that to the magnitude that I am, since they all already have their own full-time jobs. So we are able to benefit a wider audience that way. They're building partnerships and knowledge. So I go to all 5 land banks, so I learn a lot from all of those land banks, and I take everything that I learn from one land bank to another. So it's really kind of built up this mini expertise that I have in the land banking world, and I'm able to share those resources and knowledge from one land bank to another. And in addition, our land banks are a little bit more connected to each other. They're constantly asking, well, how's that land bank handling it? Or what's that land bank doing? So we're able to share resources and really make connections between our projects and our counties. Capacity and management, this has already kind of been mentioned, but MVPO, we really take on the role of manager. So it opens up the capacity for the land bank members to focus on other things. I really rely on them for the most part to help me identify their project pipeline, because they're the ones that are from those communities and have those connections. And it allows them to really focus on just giving me an address and a property owner's name, and then I'm able to run with it and take it from there for the most part. So it really opens their capacity to help inform their project pipeline. And then competition. MVPO, we have access to more contractors and more bidders for things, when things come up for sale. We are recognized in the region as people check our website constantly for projects that we have out to bid. So I do believe that our land banks are able to get more competitive sealed bids when we're trying to sell a property, and more competitive bids on performing work and completing contracts at properties as well. Our contractors also benefit hugely from the partnership that we have in this regionalization approach. We struggle to get contractors, and I'm sure that's an experience that's shared by other small land banks as well. But our contractors are doing work in counties they wouldn't have otherwise done work in, because it's just an added layer of stress for trying to figure out a new county's process. But now our contractors are pre-qualified through us. They submit all their paperwork through us, all their communication is through us, and they don't have to manage 5 different processes necessarily, or 5 different people that they're trying to communicate with. So communication for them is definitely a lot smoother, and it's more streamlined because they just know that they need to contact me if they're working with any of those 5 counties. And then I'm the one that does all the communication on the back end with the land bank. Paperwork is standard for all 5 counties. So for the most part, our contracts are all the exact same. All of our land bank attorneys for all 5 counties approve them. And it's used for all of our contractors and all of our properties. So they don't have to read the fine print over and over and over. They know it's a standard template for all 5 counties. They also know what their expectations are of them in terms of paperwork and scope of work. They know what I expect them to turn in and when they need to turn it in by. So expectations are all the same for them, which definitely makes it easier for them to work with us. Because they don't have to manage 5 different processes. And then also with our contractors, they definitely, like, their expectations from us are made very clear to them, and we have checklists for them on what we expect. And they know that if there's any issues or concerns, that they just have to communicate those through me. And then MVPO also has a benefit from the relationship that we have formed with our land banks. We really thrive on relationship building here, and it helps us with other projects that we have going on outside of the land bank world. I get to go to all 5 of my counties once a month and get to interact with really great partners and leaders in those counties. And there are very few times that I don't get in a side conversation about another project that's going on that I have my hands in with that community, with a different grant or something else that's going on. So we definitely, that face-to-face time, it just adds to it for us, which is really helpful. And then project connection, there are a lot of projects that we at MVPO administer where sometimes we hit a hard point or we're stuck on something related to land use, and we try to think about how the land bank might be able to help us with that. It doesn't happen often, but it has happened before where we'll go to a land bank with maybe an economic development related project and present it to them, and then they can decide if it's something worth going after. And it definitely helps us as a regional planning organization to have the land bank to help utilize them as a tool on other projects as well. And then building expertise. Here at MVPO, we're able to learn more about the land banking world and land use, and a lot of the things that I learned in the land bank apply to other grants and scenarios that I'm working on. So it's definitely beneficial for us as well. So that's all the content that I had. I wanted to kind of open it up for questions, concerns, things like that, because I know every land bank is unique in their own way and want to be able to provide any additional information that I can. I don't know if Sean has to, I don't know if you're unable to
Yep.
unmute
Let me,
yourself.
I'm working on that.
And then you can throw things in the chat as well.
Let me just remember how to do it. All right. You can now unmute yourselves. Hopefully.
And I'll throw my contact information up there if no one has questions, just so you have it.
Any questions? Estee. So we have a question from John Stabler. Oh, nope, it's not a question.
I just noticed my email, I missed an N. It's PLANNER, planner, PM at mvpo.org. So that is incorrect on the screen. So if anybody has questions that you want to chat offline about or more complex things, feel free to shoot me an email as well, or call our office. They're at that phone number.
All right, well, I guess. Oh.
We got one. So when you work with private property owners, are you placing assessments, or are they at no cost? Currently they're at no cost. So in our 2023 program, we were kind of scrambling and to get all of the projects that we needed. So we did them at no cost, and our land banks are now considering adding something like an application fee or charging a certain percentage to kind of get back some money to our account. So they were free previously, but we okay some kind of application fee or something like that. So great question. Okay. In terms of relationship building and sharing knowledge, how does the structure of regional management differ from a land bank association or network? So I guess I am doing a lot more hands-on with the land banks. I'm kind of their grant administrator. I'm the one contacting property owners and doing all of that like day-to-day management stuff, whereas a land bank association or network probably just provides more minimal technical assistance and other resources like that. But I am true land bank, going to all of their meetings and kind of serve as almost like a contractor to, or a consultant, I guess, to the land banks, whereas a land bank association or network probably is going to provide more general information and support that way. And Sean might be able to add to that as his involvement.
I think you hit it. Yeah, the associations, at least the Ohio Land Bank Association, acts as more of an advisory and advocacy arm to the land banks in the state. We don't really provide any management or services as Estee does with her land banks.
And then, are there fees for land banks to use your services, or what does that look like? Great question. So when there's a grant that has administration dollars, MVPO essentially captures all of those admin funds. When we are doing things for the land bank that are not grant funded or do not have admin dollars attached, we enter a technical assistance agreement with the land bank, and that kind of defines the fee structure. So typically in the past, what we have done is we only charge at the time of like actual action happens at a property. So if we're acquiring, disposing of, or demolishing a property, we will invoice the land bank based on a fee structure that's decided between them and us. But we're not charging for every single meeting that we go to, or every single social media post or website update or anything like that. So I think the most that an invoice has been to a land bank is $1,000, and that was for like a demolition of a structure, but it kind of recaptures some of that time that I spent leading up to the demolition. So everything related to procurement and all of that kind of stuff was captured in that $1,000 fee. And that's something that's agreed upon between us and the land bank, and it is definitely something that's negotiable based on how much the land bank even has in their account. Any other questions?
Right. Well, if there is no other questions, we'll be signing off. This all will be recorded. Like I said, it'll be up on the YouTube. Estee's information is here, so you can reach out to her directly if you have any additional questions. She's generally always willing to talk and help other land banks out. And if there's anything you need assistance from the OLBA, we're also always available to help. With that, I hope everyone has a good day, and thank you for joining us.